Peach and Moss podcast and YouTube interview. I'm so excited you're here. And you are actually a confidence coach and a leadership expert. And not only that, but you are the third woman in Indiana history to win both the Miss Teen USA crown and the Miss Indiana USA crown. Is that right?
That is correct. You did your homework.
I did my homework. I went to your website. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. That is quite an accomplishment. Really
Thanks. Thank you.
But
that was a small part of my life many, many years ago, but it definitely was part of the journey that led me to where I am today. So,
oh my gosh. Well, I am so excited to have you on. Before we begin, I have a little story to tell, and I know I shared with you, but I thought it'd be fun to kind of share on here. But I actually met you at the Mrs. Kentucky United States pageant, and you were glowing. You were radiant. I mean, you were on stage, and I kept watching you, and it was so funny because during the intermission, I went back into the bathroom, and my coach met me back there, and she was in her best twangy accent voice. It was Jennifer Bailey. She was like, Christina, you need to look at the coaches more. You are looking at the MC more than you are your coaches. Or your coaches. I'm judges. And I said, I know, right? She's gorgeous. And that's what
you are so sweet.
That was my first impression of you. And to find out that you actually teach about that's awesome.
You're sweet. Well, I fear that it was actually my fault because I kept staring at you and smiling at you because I loved watching you on stage. So apologize to your coach for me. So that might have been my fault. I was definitely drawn to you as well. So I appreciate it. Thank you. As a woman who's turning 40 this year, that means a lot. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. All power to you. That's awesome. So, but you're confident, but on your website, it says you weren't always like that. You actually have overcome a lot to get to where you are today. Can you kind of lead us through from the beginning forward?
Sure. And there's a lot that I could share, so feel free to stop me if I'm oversharing. My journey really started when I was 14 years old, and I was approached by someone in my small town of Evansville, Indiana, in a shopping mall. And I was told that I should consider modeling. And as a 14-year-old girl, of course, my eyes lit up and I thought, oh, wow, what an incredible opportunity. And so I pursued that opportunity, and that did lead to getting a signed modeling contract with an agency in Chicago. And that led to me starting to travel and get my feet wet in that industry. And as a part of that, I was introduced to the Miss Teen USA program. And somebody recommended that I participate in that as a way to learn more about the industry as a whole, make some great connections, et cetera, et cetera. So I competed in the system, but through the process of all of that, unfortunately, it's an industry, modeling specifically, where there's a lot of pressure to, as you know, fit extremely thin. And I've never been a super skinny person. I've always had muscle. I've always been more of an athletically built woman. And the options that I was given as a 14-year-old woman were to either become bulimic or become anorexic. And it was laid out that way for me in my first official meeting at the agency, that if I wanted to succeed in that industry, I had to make a choice, that it was okay. The older girls would show me the way. They'd take me under their wing and coach me. And logically, I thought, well, if I don't eat, my parents are going to know that something's up. So I guess the only choice is this bulimia thing. And so literally in that moment, because I wanted to pursue this dream and we just jumped through all these hoops to make this happen for me, I was coached by one of the older women in the agency how to become bulimic. And you can imagine as a 14-year-old woman, when you're so impressionable and vulnerable, what that can do to your confidence. Yes. And really, unfortunately, that's a tone for the next 10 plus years of my life. It really started to color and shape the way that I felt about myself, the way that I felt about people around me, experiences that I said no to, decisions and choices that I made. And I am just so blessed that I have an incredible supportive family who really wrapped their arms around me and got me through that time. I was able to hide it from my parents until I was about 18 years old, at which point they literally physically drug me hand and foot into a rehab facility. And it was a very devastating part of my life. And even though I got physically healthy, those scars don't go away very quickly. As I said, that really colored and shaped so much of the next 10 years of my life. And so fast forward to my early 20s, I decided to compete in Miss Indiana, flew home from Dallas, Texas, where I was attending Southern Methodist University, ended up winning, which I was shocked because they were incredible, beautiful, amazing women who I knew that were competing, and I fully did not expect to win. I really thought, okay, I'll compete, get my feet wet, kind of learn what this Miss circuit is all about, and I'll come back next year. But that's not the plan. That was not the plan. I ended up winning, and I had some weight to lose to get ready for Miss USA because I'd put the, college 15 on. And so that really unfortunately kind of opened those wounds and created some issues around that again for me. And what I found was that, again, I really made decisions based on the lack of worth that I felt for myself. I said no to opportunities that were incredible opportunities because I didn't believe enough in myself. And I don't think I could almost even believe that people were asking me to do these things that I was being asked to do. And I was blessed to meet the most incredible human being I've ever met, my husband, Chris, and in my mid-20s. And it was at that point that I wanted to make different choices. I wanted to change my mindset, change my heart, really fall in love with who I was so that I could be everything for him that I needed to be.
Yes.
And so I literally say all the time to people, he's really the best decision that I've ever made. And I don't know why I get to be the person who gets to call him my husband, but I am. And he really saved me in a sense because I was, again, completely crippled with insecurity, but he loved me unconditionally for who I was. And I felt that way for the first time in my life. And it made me want to be better. And so it was at that point that I decided to become passionate about personal and leadership development. I wanted to learn everything that I could about that industry. So I started throwing myself into personal growth, going to seminars, reading, researching. I then became very interested in the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. Some listening may or may not have heard of that, but personality inventories are widely used in business and politics and professional athletics. It's really a way for people to take a test and then be debriefed on what their innate strengths and weaknesses are, how they communicate with others, how they feel about the world around them. And it's all innate, right? It's not good or bad, right or wrong. It's just how we're wired as human beings. And once you have that awareness of self, it really leads to acceptance of self. But we have to first truly know ourselves before we can truly love ourselves. And at that time, I was still pageant consulting. I had started a part-time side hustle pageant consulting business when I was 21. And I started integrating personality inventories and personal development coaching into my pageant coaching. Because what I found was that, especially at the national level, every woman was incredible. She was beautiful, talented, compassionate, kind, fervent. There was just so much competition. It was like, how do you stand out? How do you separate yourself? How do you brand yourself as someone who can bring something unique to the table? And that was really how I tried to provide that for my clients, was to help them truly know who they were from the inside out first, and then focus on the external components. And I became very, very passionate about that. And in the last 8 years before my business really transformed into what it is today, I really saw my clients grow and evolve so much, not only as human beings, but in their pageant experiences. And I'm proud to say that almost every client I've ever had was a top 10 or a top 5 finalist.
Wow.
And or a winner. And it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the women being willing to take on the tools that I provided and do the work on themselves from the inside